And welcome to the second session on the remote teaching course. This module is all about how we motivate students during online learning and how we keep students engaged. There's a real moral imperative here, and I think this is of particular importance and needs to be underscored. We've seen this so-called digital divide between the haves and the have-nots, those with really good internet connections, in fact, those with basic IT infrastructure in their homes, such as the access to a laptop or a desktop computer. So I think it's well worth noting some of the statistics that I'm about to share with you. So I recently came across an NFER study, which is an educational think tank in the UK. And it said teachers are in regular contact with, on average, about 60% of students. That's just over half. So we're looking at, over a third of students who are not engaging with their teachers or in regular contact. It further states that approximately 42% of students handed in their last piece of work. So, okay, students may be present, but then less than half of these students are actually turning in any assignment. So we can't measure or we can't really legislate for how many kids are actually engaging with the system. Here's another pretty shocking statistic that should really kind of wake us up if we're serving in these particular areas. Pupils in high deprivation areas have a hand-in rate of 30%. So less than a third of students in high deprivation areas are actually handing in anything. So clearly this is a serious issue. And I'm just going to try and share with you some ways that we motivate students during online learning. Again, it's not going to be a panacea for all of the difficulties with engaging particular types of learners, because for some students, some families, no matter what you do, they won't engage. They will always disengage with this kind of process. But I believe there are some things that we can do to make some students at least want to be there. So the module coverage, I'm trying to cover these following questions. How do we engage students online? I want it to be really practical with some workable solutions. What are we competing with? I think this is an important question that we as educators need to grapple with in terms of the technology that's available to these young people, and that we are actually in direct competition with them. And finally, do I need to entertain? And I ask that because, I think it's a question worth posing, because we are in a kind of edutainment culture. And edutainment is this notion where YouTubers and TikTokers and tweeters are blending elements of entertainment with education. So if it doesn't have a catchy song to it, or it doesn't have some funky music, or there's no game involved, how much do students really engage with the process? So I'm going to try to explore some of those questions. So firstly, what are we competing with? The number one contender is this powerful smart device that most students have in their pockets called a smartphone. And the myriad of apps that they have access to basically acts as a distraction. And that is who we are contending with as educators. We're asking them to move online and engage with the work, yet they've still got all of these distractions on the same device that we're asking them to engage with, in the work with. So it's worth just thinking about that, and maybe what we can actually borrow from some of the apps. So I've seen, some educators do some things on TikTok and various other social media platforms. I myself have done things on Instagram, which has helped to engage some of the learners who might not necessarily turn up to a Zoom call or Google Meet. So it's worth just looking at some of the apps that are available and how you might utilize those to act as a learning tool. Because I think as educators, we need to adapt and move with the times and engage the pupils in, I guess, some of the platforms that they're already using. That is not an excuse to dumb down content. It's not an excuse to pander to student whims. I sincerely don't believe in either of those things. But I do believe in utilizing and harnessing existing technology that young people engage with to create learning opportunities that are still robust, that still have some weight and some substance behind them, which is what we want all of our young learners to access. Things that are rigorous in content and won't just entertain. Okay, I'm just going to introduce you to one of the strategies that I use to motivate students and get them engaged in the learning. And one of the things that I did during the pandemic is a daily dose of motivation. And I'm a firm believer in I guess, kind of psychic, and when I say psychic, to do with the brain and how the brain is triggered and how the brain is motivated to want to do things. I'm really interested in the kind of psychic mechanisms that we can tap into to get students to engage and be motivated. So, as I said, one of the things I do is a daily dose of motivation. In order to get engaged learners, you have to motivate them in some way. And, you know, I'm not going to explore the differences between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, but I believe as an educator, part of your purpose is to tap into those deep desires and those things that kind of click for students and say, that's what it's about. So I would have a theme in my daily dose of motivation, and one of my themes was perseverance in the face of adversity and challenges, and I'll explain why. Okay, so you may be familiar with the boxer Tyson Fury. He's one of my idols. I quite like boxing. I'm not the biggest fan, but I like sports. But besides the sport, it's the journey of the hero that really fascinates me with Tyson Fury. And this is what I explain to my students. So imagine you're my students now. I'm introducing the lesson to you. Hey guys, today's daily dose of motivation is perseverance in the face of adversity. And I'm going to tell you a story about a phenomenal man, an athlete called Tyson Fury. If you look on the left-hand side here, we can clearly see a man who is out of shape. He doesn't look athletic, okay? That is past a dad bod. He's overweight. He doesn't look like a world championship contender. But there's a twist. Tyson Fury suffers from depression. And at one point, his depression became so chronic that he was suicidal. And I remember listening to a remarkable story about Tyson Fury. He had a Ferrari. Obviously, he's really wealthy. He had everything. He had fame. He had wealth. He had a family. Everything that appeared to be the trappings of success. And one day he was in this Ferrari and he was going over 100 miles an hour and he was heading towards the edge of a bridge. And he said, this is it, I'm going to take my life. I've had enough. And he said, as he's speeding at over 100 miles an hour, he hears an audible voice tell him, you can't do this. And he stops, pulls the car over, and breaks down in floods of tears. And he said at that moment, he realized he had too much to lose. And that was the voice of God. That's what he said. And then he made an effort to clean up his life, to quit the alcohol, to quit the drugs, to quit the reckless, dangerous behavior. And here we can see Tyson Fury. This was in 2019, I believe, or no, it may have been this year, 2020, when he became the world heavyweight champion and defeated a guy called Deontay Wilder. And for me, that is perseverance in the face of adversity. I'm going to stop now, but that's the kind of story that I would tell around that. Hopefully that was compelling. But the students listen, and it just gets them to think, okay, so we're in this adversity at the moment. We're facing these challenges. I can't see certain family members. I'm not allowed to do the things that I would normally do. How do we persevere? And I will say to them, this is how you can do it. One way you can persevere is to show up every day online and keep going. Do not let COVID-19 defeat you. Come out on top. Be victorious, be a winner. Okay? So that's the idea of just motivating students and giving them something that resonates within their being and not just the cognitive aspect, because education is more than that. It's more than that, and especially for those people who are in positions of pastoral authority, whether you're a senior leader, you're always in a position of pastoral authority, whether you're a form tutor, whether you are a head of year, assistant head of year, etc., etc. It's about more than educating the head. We educate hearts and characters and souls. And this is what this is about, and trying to give them something to hang on to in this chaotic world. So that is one way that I motivate my students. That's my style. That's me. That's unique to me. You need to find your way of how you motivate your students. That's unique to you. It's not corny. You're not trying to be something that you're not. You are being you because you care about them. Whether it's something you want to share in your personal life, or your own story that you want to tell about something. I leave that to your discretion about what you want to divulge and how you want to do it. But I think we have a moral imperative to really give students something that resonates with their character and their sense of being. Okay, so I'm sure you've heard of some of the concerns that parents have around motivating their own children. I've heard things like, I just can't motivate him. He wakes up at midday and whatever I try and do, it's just not working. I hear, I just can't get him to do any work. He refuses to engage. He's a kinesthetic learner, not an online one. These are some of the very real worries, concerns, complaints that parents have. These aren't just made up. These are some of the questions and concerns that I've had to manage and process and deal with as a school leader and teacher. So in terms of motivating students who present some of these issues, this is where pastoral teams have a real crucial role to play in how they make contact. It's not up to the pastoral leader, although I'm sure he or she will be making contact with certain individuals, but there are form tutors, there are heads of year. I know in some places there are co-tutors or assistant form tutors, for want of a better phrase. They play a crucial role in making contact with some of these learners who are struggling to engage. I also think we have an imperative to engage through good content. I think we really need to think about what we're presenting and how we're presenting it, i.e. pedagogy, and our ideas and our resources. Also, just having teachers that reward and praise students. I think that's important. Well done, 20 of you, you're on time in the online online classroom today. Well done. And just praising students who are doing the right things. Excellent for handing in that piece of work. I know it's a little late, but I know you struggled to get that in. I think that's really important as well for that motivational boost for students. That everybody wants to hear that they're doing a good job and that their efforts are being recognized. So if we think about how do we maintain the social aspect of learning during social distancing? We know that learning is or happens in communities. Yes, it can happen in isolation and we can take courses on our own, but really that doesn't happen in a vacuum. You might be studying the material in isolation sometimes, but this idea of learning is communal. Because why are we learning? We're learning for the purpose of serving others, and we serve others in communities. So if I undertake a course on leadership, that's not so I can sit in my office and think about leadership. It's that I can lead within a community. So we've taken that, or not we have, but that communal aspect has been taken away. So I think it's worth thinking about how we maintain a communal aspect during social distancing. One of the ways that I have done so is by gamifying aspects of the learning. And when I say gamifying, it might not necessarily mean a quiz or using a particular piece of technology. It's the idea that there's an aim, just like in football, there's an aim for you to score more goals than you let in. And there's an end point. So any way that you can think of a game, that's a way of motivating your learners and keeping them engaged. One of the ways that I've done it is something called a synonyms game. And I'll just explain what that is. So that'll be my kind of warm up, and it's really good fun. It's kind of low bar to entry as well. Everybody can do it. And I will give them 1 minute to come up with as many synonyms for a particular word as possible. So here you can see on the screen, you've got the word good, and I'll say, right, go. You've got a minute to come up with as many synonyms, alternative words for good as possible. And it's remarkable how you would see, adolescents, sixth formers throwing words in the chat, and I've got 15, I've only got 12, and it's kind of real good fun, and it just increases that level of engagement because that's what you're trying to do, and it's communal because we're competing essentially, and it's just that idea of, okay, I'm trying to be the best, who's got the best vocabulary, and then we celebrate that, and we give virtual high fives to the winner and things like that, and we just kind of increase that vibration and engagement. So that's one way. I'm sure you can come up with various ways for your particular subject in order to increase engagement and gamify aspects of the learning. So that's the end of this particular module. Once again, if you would like to get in contact with me about any of the ideas, or for me to send you some details, or just for you to explore some of the things that I've spoken about here, please, you can email me, darren@keystolearn.org, and I'm also blogging at keystolearn.org. All the W's. So good luck with motivating your students in the online space, and I'll be interested to hear about some of your ideas that you've implemented and the impact. All the best.